today we have our last session, and it's about cultivating a healing architecture. You will have seen this. So it's really drawing the strands of all the weeks of training together, looking at how has this landed in us, but also looking more deeply at how we can bring this home to the broader community, and at least, starting to look at that. That will be an ongoing process. And also to look at, so what does this mean for us personally, and what are the personal next steps we want to take coming from this? And I would love to start by creating just a short overview of what we covered, the themes that we covered, explore together with you what some of our insights were, and then look briefly at what do we mean with healing architecture? How does this connect to the health and well-being policy that we're developing in the broader community? And then we'll move into a triad from there. So I'll just start by, or maybe we start, I feel like I would love to just hear briefly from you first, maybe even just in the chat, about how you're here today, how you arrived today. We could even start by just taking a moment to feel that in our bodies, just closing our eyes and taking a moment to feel, how am I today? How's my breath landing in my body? How is my body settling into the planet? Where do I feel exceptionally comfortable in my body today? And where might I also have glimpses of discomfort as I settle more deeply into my body? And how can I create space for those? A welcoming embrace. Can I soften this perception towards myself, my body? And also taking a moment to feel my emotions, what is touching my heart at the moment. Welcoming my mind space, letting go of the busyness of the day, but also welcoming the inspiration of my mind. and inviting my higher self to be here with me today. Yeah, knowing that we're here within the greater framework of the community impulse in the Findhorn Foundation, the NFA, the wider community, and inviting the angel of Findhorn to overlight our session, our module today. And whenever you're ready, you're warmly invited to turn on your video. If you are able, it would be lovely to see you. And opening your eyes, just welcoming each other. All those of us who are able to turn on our videos. Yeah, I'm just taking a moment to welcome those of us who can be here today, those of us who might watch the video later. Yeah, and just sending a welcoming, like a heartful welcome to each other. Gratitude for you all for the perseverance with this journey, this exploration, this learning together. I'm just laughing about the Sophie's flow in the chat. Lots of pluses around just a few little minuses. It's a great expression of how you might be. Yeah, and it would be lovely to just have a little expression from each of you, how you're here today, how you're feeling, how you're coming online. You can, yeah, I think we'll just do it in the chat. In a way, it's easier than everybody unmuting and speaking. Just a few words. Mm. Hmm. Mm. Yeah, it's great to see this. Christine feeling happy, excited, grateful. Judith a little sleepy, happy. And Anne's a bit challenged. And would you like to say a few words to that, or would you just prefer to leave it at that? You can just unmute if you like.
I think it's partly deep process and it's partly external events. So I need to find somewhere to live quite quickly, which is always enormously unsettling. So I'm finding that a very strong combination at the moment. But despite that, very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Absorbing an acupuncture session, wanting to sleep, happy to connect, Caroline, grateful, curious, slow and comfortable with that, light feet, heavy head, bit rushed, incomplete, not enough integration, excited, curious, buzzy mind, present. And Indira, I just see you also with weary and sad. Would you like to share anything? A few words more? Just to allow us to be with you in that. Would you like to share a few words?
I'm not sure. I just find it atomic to be here in the room.
Sorry?
Oh, sorry.
No, I can hear you, just not, yes.
Yeah, it was just I had my external microphone on. I don't know really what to say. I just feel like some days I just feel like the weight, the weight of the world, I guess. That I know isn't mine, but it just feels like it is partly mine. So
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe we could, for a moment, just offer you some, what we call co-regulation. So you're not alone with this, but you allow us a moment to feel you with that, if that's okay for you. It's a beautiful...
people want to do that. Yeah.
I think we'd love to. So we can just focus for a moment on Indira. In that, we practice this, I feel you feeling me. So just feeling Indira, your system, the very unique, beautiful being that you are. I think we've all had experience of how much you give, how much you're there for others. Yeah, and just seeing your heart carrying grief, sadness, heaviness for the world today. And we can allow our hearts to connect to your heart. Embrace you with our hearts. Yeah. Yeah, maybe also together we can just help to ground it a bit. And I wonder, Indira, how it is for you when we are with you for a moment. How does it feel? How does it land in your body?
Me, Kosha.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very calming. Yeah, I thought it would be very exposing, but it isn't. It feels liberating.
Hmm. And also I want to really welcome firstly, I welcome that we're doing this online and that my coughing a little bit of COVID cough here doesn't affect any of you in any way. I'm really grateful for that. Yeah, and also just as much grateful that your heartfulness and your vulnerability can reach our heartfulness and our vulnerability, Indira. And thank you for sharing this with us. And, you know, Thomas often says that it's, in a way, at this time, it's really it's more of a surprise that we don't grieve more than we do. And being allowed to share sadness with you, you know, I think there's a part of it where it's maybe unfamiliar for us to do this together. And there's a part, at least to me, where it's really beautiful to be allowed to share this with you. Yeah. So thank you. And I just welcome you to be here with what is alive in you, you know, and I'm sure you're not alone with having that strand. And also that at the same time, there can also be happiness, you know, and that these are often not even so far apart. And also noticing the sleepiness, I just invite us all to have a good stretch. Maybe a yawn if you want to and you need to wake yourself up a bit, you know, to give yourself a little shake or a little movement, whatever you need. Yeah, beautiful. And I'll just take us through a short overview of the trauma-informed leadership in community course that we've gone through together, where this is the last session. And it'll be very short. And while we do this, you might have missed some of the sessions. You might not have gone online and have looked at the review for it. Just so you know, there is handouts for most of them. So if you ever want to look at the synopsis, it's really easy to go back and look at the handouts also. But while we look at this, just allow it to land in you and also see what were your personal insights, things that stayed with you. Oh, thanks, Indira. Yeah, and the fact that we're going on to this, Indira, doesn't mean that we're not with you anymore. I would love us to just stay with this warm embrace of you and each other while we move into the content. Yeah. And you, Anne. So we started with just looking at what is trauma and define trauma as the inner response in an individual or a group when we're facing a situation or having an experiencing that is overwhelming, where the high level of stress overloads the capacity of the nervous system or our shared nervous system to actually ground the experience and integrate the experience. And that this leaves marks like pockets of frozen energy in us, between us, in our collectives, in our lines of ancestry. And that while we've started really looking at individual trauma much more broadly, and also the current Scottish guidelines for trauma-informed organizational care are really focused on personal individual trauma, but also that we're seeing more and more how personal trauma, ancestral trauma, and collective trauma are really intertwined, shaping the sea that we all swim in of our social fabric. We looked at the symptoms of trauma, and that we, fundamentally it really shows up as either hyperactivation or absence, which is also extreme tiredness, depression, or fragmentation, separation, and very often a combination of these. And we also looked at the quality of healing. And that healing is really the restoration of the original movement of life and light through the fabric of our nervous systems, the fabric of our social systems. So that healing is in a way knitting back together the fabric of life. And that this disembodied energy of trauma needs an embodied experience. It needs to flow back through the nervous system in order to complete itself. And collective trauma needs a collective body to process what couldn't be processed. So even as individuals, we need often another person to support us through co-regulation to integrate our individual trauma. But definitely as soon as it comes to the ancestral and the collective, we need collective bodies of nervous systems to start grounding and healing, which is why we're so lucky to be in community. We looked at our human superpowers to address trauma, the power of presence, of 3-sync. We've been practicing the 3-sync practice again and again, which is, on the one hand, really close to the different ways that we've been meditating and mindfulness practice, but it brings with it that deep level of embodiment and always anchoring in the physical, and from there also really welcoming the emotional specifically before moving on to the witnessing awareness and the spiritual awareness and inviting those in. Part of presence is also making space for reflection, digestion, and integration in our lives, and bringing home practices around self-regulation, titration, resourcing. And all of that comes together into our right to be. So in a way, we've been cultivating our right to be, which according to Thomas Hübl is one of our 3 basic human rights, and one which we haven't always fully embodied yet. The second superpower is linked to our right to belong, And I think we found out that this is quite a strong one for our community, belonging, not belonging as a theme, and the superpower of relationality. So really weaving relationality around us. So practicing relational and system sensing. I feel you feeling me. The ability to co-regulate, but also cultivating collective coherence. And where the 3-sync is in a way creating more coherence within our bodies, relationality helps us to build more coherence in our collective bodies. And the more coherence we create, this is the unfortunate wonder of this work. It doesn't feel so great, but it is great, is that the more coherence we create and the more awareness we create, the more of the shadow materials can show up. It's a very easy recipe. The more light falls in, the more shadows can be seen. So as soon as we walk a bit further and we think, whew, that was intense, and now I've integrated it, I've learned it, cool, here am I, so wise, I was never before. And we walk around the next corner and there's a little monster waiting for us, welcoming us and saying, here I am. I've been wanting to be embraced for a very long time. And life goes on. Yeah, and so we're lucky to have a third superpower. I think at the time we did it, we didn't really speak about it as a third superpower. I brought it more into the session of leading from the future, but it's the superpower of creativity and linked to our right to become. And again, you'll receive a handout, so I'll also share this in the handout. But the right to become in any one moment that we can wake up to what is happening, look it in the eye, enlarge our perspective, and bring in new possibility, insight, intuition, inspiration, imagination, innovation. And from there, we went and looked at specifically personal trauma and resilience, getting to know our own typical personal trauma responses. We didn't actually work on personal trauma integration. We worked on refining our awareness so that we can start to actually see our traumatic responses of hyperactivation, numbness, absence, fragmentation, separation within us. Notice them and then expand our capacity for self-care, for resourcing, for joy, for self-compassion, self-regulation, but also becoming very aware when it's a good time to reach out for help from others. And we also created the triads in the course so that we could support each other more on more different layers. And this mutual support is really part of the healing architecture. We moved on to look at trauma and resilience in our teams and explored how our personal trauma may lead us to take specific roles in teams or co-create specific patterns in our teams. We also looked at how we can distinguish and start to see where in our teams do we experience creative flow versus stagnation and repetition, and can we become aware of that, the distinctive different energies. We looked at organizational trauma and resilience, and there we explored looking back on the history of being here in community in Findhorn, or also in other places, but specifically exploring moments of coherence building and resourcing versus moments of pain and traumatization in the history of our community. Exploring cycles of repetition, recurrent themes, rhythms of fragmentation and coherence building, and also what supported moments of learning and integration to emerge. Yeah, in between, we kept coming back to topics around how do we bring our system sensing, relational sensing to these different levels of our social realities. And then in our last session, we looked at collective trauma and resilience, and we just reiterated how we are all born into collective trauma, that it's the water that we grew up in, the air that we've been breathing, and that we're all looking through it while we're examining it. And together we explored, and we've also uploaded a chat of collecting some of our insights and wisdom around the effects of the fields of trauma that we're addressing as a community. And also some of the larger historical scars that our community is working with. And what are some of the ancestral and collective sources of resilience and resourcing also that we have to work with? So this is a brief run through, very brief, there's a lot more there. And I'd love to ask you, what are some of the things that you remember from the training that have stuck with you, or that you've taken into your lives, that you've explored in your triads? And I'd love us to collect some of that together in the chat. And you're welcome to just take a moment and mull it over.
Can you ask the question again, Kosha?
Well, what are some of the insights from this training that have stayed with you? You know, it's been 6 months, right? We started in January, we're in June now. And, you know, it's only been like 2 hours every 3 weeks, you know? So it hasn't been so much, really. But what stayed with you? What's been an insight for you? What did you learn? And you're welcome also to just speak it out. You know, I'd love to hear your voices.
I'll have a go at that then. I think one of my, I'd say that one of my insights would be that the point is not to try to fix anything. That it's enormously helpful to be reminded that in this community, especially because some of us identify it as a spiritual community, that the shared intention to bring more light in through individual practice inevitably means that we are challenged to continue to work on our own unintegrated stuff.
Hmm.
Let's call it trauma, because we're in a trauma-informed leadership course.
Mhm.
And there's my hope would be that going forward that there's less judgment on that fact, and more a kind of a more awake appreciation of the fact that that shows that we're doing our work well, actually. If we don't judge people for being in stuff, but come more towards them and come more towards ourselves when we're in it without judgment, you know, it shouldn't be like this, I should be over it, or they shouldn't be like that, for God's sake, etc. And help people to presence things, because I'm also realizing there is nothing to be fixed and everything to learn about non-judgmentally presencing whatever is arising in that moment. It reminds me of when Thomas was visiting this community and someone asked him, what is enlightenment? And he took a while to respond, but when he did respond, he said, enlightenment is the ability to feel every feeling fully in the moment that it's happening. That's quite something. And I see that you know, it's great that you started our session off today in that way, encouraging us to do the practice, to presence what is arising through Indra. And because there's no separation, you know, it's in our space, it's for all of us. It's just that she happens to be the one that is feeling it and naming it right now.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. Thank you. Yeah, beautiful way of expressing it. Yeah. Yeah, any other voices? So Sophie and Anne. Oh, yeah, that's a lovely one. Different ways of trauma informing work style, the leaning in and leaning out. That's right. Yeah, and co-regulation and witnessing in the triad. More compassionate about others' sometimes negative reaction to me. Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me, I brought this, I just love this quote by Thich Nhat Hanh. When you plant lettuce, if it doesn't grow well, you don't blame the lettuce. You look into the reasons it isn't doing well. Yeah. And I think that's such a beautiful, beautiful way to embrace each other in community. Yeah, anything else anybody would like to share? And just so you know, we're going to have a triad to look at, you know, what is my next step coming from this? So that's not what we're asking now. It's more like, you know, what are the insights that they might be very closely related, but just so you know that the other one, you'll still have space to deepen that. So other insights you'd like to share?
I mean, I could add really like a ditto to what Sue was saying.
Yeah.
A much, I feel like the aim of the course is to have much more awareness of trauma present in myself and in our collective, you know, so I feel like that's landed. And my hope that, in a way, like Sue said, that I and that we all have a greater compassion and understanding of all those difficult bits when they come up, that there's more behind it. I mean, that's, you know, I think it's what we've been working with and wanting for a long time, but that really, and then there's a patience, then there's a willingness to have a different way of dealing with the polarities that are so strong, with the opinions that can lead to so much suffering. You know, the real slowing down and personally, I've also looked at, you know, family trauma in a way that I haven't before, because it's not, I don't feel like I've experienced in my life huge traumatic experiences, but I can see the smaller one, and in my family, and in my father and my mother, and how that's played out, and how that's clearly informed me and some of the roles I've taken on in the community and stuff like that. And all the practices of greater subtle awareness. And I'm working with Stephen Busby's stuff at the same time. It's so intertwined that it's been that's been very supportive. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Thank you.
beautiful. Thanks, Judith. And I love that you're working with Stephen as well. I wasn't aware of that. Yeah. Of course, Stephen was studying with Thomas for a long time before starting to channel his own flow of energy. And it's so precious also, that connection as it comes through him.
So I just, before I leave, I would like...
Yes, we'll miss you. How can you go, Hannah?
I know, but I committed to be, what is the home group leader for this Findhorn, Create Findhorn as you are. And unfortunately, the session is soon.
Yeah.
So it's too much commitment. Yes. However, what I noticed, especially when we looked at organizational trauma, I looked at my time in the Findhorn Foundation, the 30 years I spent there, and identified just I mean, it was a journey, you know, up and down, but organizational, how much trauma there was in the organization, and looking at it with a new vocabulary and a new insight, I found very intriguing, because until now, that yes, it's my spiritual experience, and it's the spiritual experience of the Findhorn Foundation to go through all these very difficult times, and we always come out of it. So that was very interesting. But what I realized or noticed, that it actually relates to my personal trauma with my family and the company we had, and that I actually never really looked at it, what it meant as a teenager when we lost the company, very traumatic. But I just pushed it back away and said, oh no, it had nothing to do with me. But it had actually a huge impact on my family and on my whole family, you know. And yeah, and I really woke up one morning, and I had this well of grief came up, you know, from something which happened 50 years ago, and talking with my sister and brother about it a little bit, and I will continue doing this. So that was really, yeah, very useful and helpful, and yeah, making it personal. So that's, I'm not so much an abstract ideas and reflection. So I always bring it back to myself. So yeah, but this is so that will definitely continuing with it, you know, and use what I learned, and I promise myself when I have to look after my mother in 2 weeks' time, that I will revisit all the sessions about trauma and using this as a time to go deeper. So thank you. And I will leave you in 2 minutes.
That's amazing, Hannah. Thank you so much. And I think you and others, yeah, Judith, were speaking also about this deep connectedness, what we've spoken about again and again, the intertwining of the personal, ancestral, and collective trauma.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's as if each of us in our uniqueness becomes like a very unique little knot that wants to be unraveled, like a little mystery, and not such a little one, quite a big mystery. Yeah, and it's beautiful how you describe that. And I would say, you know, that's one of the mysteries, but it's also a place where I experience us to start harvesting unexpected benefits. You know, because as many have said, well, we're just mainly working on making trauma more present everywhere. And suddenly we have trauma staring at us everywhere. You know, why on earth are we doing this? But the interesting thing is that we do start gaining these rare moments of insight, cross connections, synchronicities, where suddenly a little piece of knot unravels itself. And we think, oh, that's the connection there. And it's like that reconnection of the fabric of life. And a lot of it seems to happen more by creating space for the light to fall in through our awareness than by actually doing so much. Yeah.
Okay,
So
I will leave you
that's
now.
one last sentence, Hannah. There is something that I would like to do with you, which is meet with you and the other people from the NFA that are around, the new listeners and
Oh, yes.
creators at some point, to speak to you about the some of the thoughts around the healing architectures.
Yeah, me
Get
too.
away
Me
for
too.
today, but I'm
Yes.
going to come
Okay.
back to you.
Yes.
Much love.
Okay. Bye bye, everyone, and see you
Bye.
around.
Good. So I think we'll have more time for more insights towards the end, but maybe for now we leave it at this. And I'll say a few words about the healing architecture, because of course, as I think most things in the field of Thomas, it's more about raising awareness than putting in place structures. And yet, I believe that we may be able to put in place some structures that help us to ground us more deeply in the present and the future of our being together here. And, as we have looked at healing trauma, and I think I said before that the term healing architecture for me, and I couldn't actually find literature about this, but this is what I was told, is that Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, he brought, the healing of the truth and reconciliation committees in place, but he also spoke about healing architectures in the terms of bringing healing architectures to the communities of South Africa. And I'm not sure, Nicola, whether you ever heard about this, but maybe we could go on a little research tour together. What I heard is that, he really invited eldership to come forward throughout the communities in South Africa to help keep the peace in the transition period. So an idea that there are people who, in a way, are good, you could say, at relational and system sensing, who really help hold an eye on the collective and speak out if there is something cropping up that could go into the direction of fragmentation, strong polarization, and in the end, violence, and stop it early on, or welcoming it early on so that it can melt again. Yeah, and what we've learned is that to heal trauma, we need to meet it first. So just as we've said here, creating spaces where we can actually become aware of trauma, which is by its very nature absent, unconscious. We can't meet trauma directly. We meet it through its symptoms. And what can help us to see it is to start distinguishing more clearly where is there flow and where is there emergent flow and where is there non-emergent stuckness. Where is there creativity? Where is there repetition? In me, in my language, in my relationships, in my teams, in my communities, in my life, how does it feel? And as a part of that, where do I experience myself as being responsive? And where do I become reactive or withdrawn? Where does information flow? Where does it get trapped? So just watching inside myself, where does information get trapped inside myself, is an interesting indicator. Yeah, and then there's this glorious sentence that we keep coming back to, that challenges and difficulties are not in the way, they are the way. So what is difficult becomes the signpost. What is difficult in my life and my relationships in the community becomes a signpost towards, that's where that unconscious area is showing itself. Yeah, none of us can do this alone. We can only do this together. So we're aiming really to shift slowly, to shift from becoming trauma sensitive. And I think we've done a good job at that in this course. And trauma informed, like creating a trauma informed community, actually means that we also do build structures that recognize the nature of trauma. And then slowly become trauma integrating, trauma healing as a community, more and more trauma healing. So the way that we have been working on this, and Cornelia, Rosanna, Caroline have been part of this, we've brought this to the mental health and well-being policy group, and we've been working on further developing the health and well-being policy for the community. And this is very specific, but I would like to just briefly share it with you, because I think this is a very rudimentary but a first way of bringing some of what we've been exploring here into the fabric of our community, where the vision is to ensure that everyone involved in our community is safe, and we do everything possible within the limits of our environment to minimize suffering within our community. And that we work in close collaboration with other institutions in Maury and beyond to make this possible. And that we maybe come back to recognizing the aspect of the Findhorn community that was always geared towards being a healing community. So providing consciously an environment for inner and outer healing for all of us who live here and all of those who visit us. Preventing further trauma, responding, intervening where trauma becomes mental dis-ease, mental unwellness, and supporting each other to recover in those moments. Yeah, and then the policy would have 3 different layers. The one for individual health and well-being, which Cornelia and others have been working on for a long time, Laura, many others. And here we spoke about really 3 different levels, like caring, just bringing this trauma-informed knowledge that we've built to the notion of care, that each of us becomes a node of self-care and care for others in our community, where we open our sensing instrument, this beautiful nervous system, to become more and more aware of others around us and how they are feeling, how I am feeling, reaching out for help when I need help, but also noting when I have a concern for others. So it's care and then note and then relate, these 3 steps in the individual health and well-being, where we note if we don't feel completely safe about someone else in our team, in the community, where we feel that somebody might not be as well as they're trying to make it seem, or we see that they're withdrawing. And we cultivate an atmosphere where we can also perceive these individuals as an expression of the whole, and then we relate either directly to the person that we're worried, concerned about, to find out what the support around them is, or if that's not appropriate, to build a first line of support in the community where we can provide more support for each other. So this is something that has been there in the past, and that that is being recreated and strengthened at the moment in a cross-organizational way. And the second level is one where we'd really love your support and your help, which is, and this is new, the level of collective health and well-being in the community. And again, we have these 3 steps of caring, noting, we could also say sensing, caring, noting, and relating. So becoming a node of care for our teams and our organizational fields, and really starting to read our community more as a constant practice. And we started doing this together when we looked at organizational resilience. And from the beginning, like, when is our community becoming more polarized? Where do we see herds of conflict arise and cycle? Where do we see groups of people withdrawing in an unhealthy way? Where do we see polarization between the community and our larger environment emerging? And how might we weave there? But also, part of this care or this noting might be realizing, we've been functioning within fields of collective trauma, but we actually haven't been allocating time and energy to look at those recurrent themes in our community together, or the larger fields that we work in. So really to allocate resources, time, energy to note. And I think the biggest question that is still open is, how do we relate around this? What are the systems in our collective field? We have a whole group of individuals that are trained in terms of individual mental health, and that might be able to support if it's more about an individual. And we have a whole other group of people who've been very trained in looking at health of community in terms of process work, many other tools that we're working with, the training that Anna Rhodes is doing, many other trainings that have been here. So we have a lot of people with great skills. And why I was also reaching out to Hannah is I think it's really important here to relate to the NFA and to the original pastoral role of the listeners and conveners, but how can we create that? And then in parallel, as a third strand, to develop an ongoing curriculum for health and well-being. And this was started 3 years ago and then kind of fell asleep a bit during COVID. And we could say that the trauma-informed leadership course was also part of picking up that curriculum for health and well-being. Yeah, so that's very concretely where we are, what we're working on. So there is a kind of a, let's put what we're doing into practice. And at the same time, I know that there is so many aspects of this that we could deepen, different spaces in our community that we could open up for deeper, more sensitive sharing amongst each other, for a refined practice of co-regulation, of possibly global social witnessing events. And I would really love for us to collect a bit towards the end. But with that, I'd love to go us into a triad And, you know, we're not asking of you all now to start working in terms of putting this health and well-being policy, completing it and putting it into practice. You know, I think we have a group that is working on that. You're really welcome to bring your inspiration in. We'd love that. But also realizing that each of us has our very own contribution to make. And this might be very, very unique. Each of us has our very own node in the community, you know, our piece of the puzzle that we fulfill, our circles within the social fabric that we draw, our circle of influence, a circle of sensing, of perception. And also, you know, the self-care that sits at the heart of building a trauma-informed community sits at the heart of our work. None of us is able to contribute if we're not able to build those relationships also that are needed for our self-care. So yeah, what matters most is that my contribution is synchronized with who I am, my capacities, what I'm working on in myself at the moment. You know, my very specific questions. And yeah, so I'd love to invite you to go into a triad where 19 people. So Christine, I'm happy to sit out and everybody else can go into a triad. And I'd love you to ask yourself, so what is my next step around building healing architecture? And especially looking at this caring, noting or sensing and relating. You know, we don't have to become precise about this because the health and well-being policy is still emerging. But what is my unique contribution at this time? What would I love it to be? What do I feel is important for us to do? And maybe you have a very concrete thought about something that you would like us as a cross-organizational system to look at, to address more, a space that you would like to see us open or cultivate more. But what is my next step? What is my contribution at this time? What would I like to see as a part of the healing architecture? Is that clear enough? Are there any questions about this or anything needed before you go?
How long would you like, Kosha, with the rooms?
I think we do my normal preferred timing, a minute for arrivals, and then let's do 6 minutes per person. And then let's give 3-4 minutes at the end to complete together before we come back.
So shall I open the rooms?
Yeah, is everybody ready? Great, enjoy.
Kosha, I'll pause the recording.
Yeah, that's great.
And then I was going to go and jump into a room and then you'll be here.
Odd.
Yeah. I think we're all back. Looks like we've lost 1 or 2 people. Well, I hope they find their way back. Sometimes the pathways in Zoom are strange. So I hope they'll come back soon. Ah, there you go. Craig is back. Okay, we still seem to be missing 1 person. But great, thank you, everybody. I hope that was revealing, interesting, curious. And I think we have like half an hour time left. I would love to actually have a round. I know we've never had that here, just because I'm concerned about how much time it takes to hear from everybody, but I feel like it would be very lovely to hear everybody's voices as a completion. And that means that we'll have around a minute, 1.5 minutes per person. And just to hear whatever came up for you now, whatever's alive in you now. And if it's like a next step that you've decided for, or something that you would like to see happen in the community, you're included in our healing architecture, then it's great if you can name that. And I see that Christina's put on the recording for us, so we won't miss anything. Yeah, that would be lovely. So who is courageous to make a start? And then we'll actually ask you to simply pass it on to the next person, so we can have a smooth movement.
I can start.
So, thanks, Rosanna.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm leaving, and there is I really thanks you, Kosha, for this training, and also for your contribution to the strategy, health and safe health mental meeting with the policies and everything. And so sad that I cannot continue to contribute and to dream into, or ground what we are doing, what you are doing, we are doing. There is so much beauty and scope, of the first, all the things. I'm not going to be. I think that is the sadness and the tenderness that I feel. I'm deepening in these 6 months. I think the learning that I've done with Thomas Hulbor about presencing, resilience, looking at the collective trauma and reflection, how this embodiment need to happen, and to be able to feel and sense. So there is a lot of different things that are more aligned and deep with me. And for me, my next step is really to go to Italy and see what I can co-create there with the little communities there, to create also there, when you talk about the vision, about the safe environment, it's like, that's one of my vision also. Yeah, so that's me. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Kosha. It's very pleasure and privilege to work with you.
Yeah, thank you, Rosanna. I'm going to just hold it to a minute because I'm realizing, it's probably best. Yeah.
So next I will say Joy. So you're next.
This Joy?
That Joy, our one and only Joy.
No, not at all. Joy in everybody. And what are we sharing about, Kosha? Just whatever we want to say.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've learned anything new. I've learned a new language to describe what I'm describing. And I'm right in the middle of synchronizing between my unique contribution and my capacities. And my unique contribution has shot up. The amount of light I'm bringing in, the amount of wisdom and uplift and all that stuff, it's fantastic. And at the same time, the most unfriendly, unintegrated, deepest pain body, shadow, every level comes up. This is a pattern through my life, not just here. So that is just, now I've got a bit of a new language, but that's where I'm at. This is exactly where I'm at. I'm in an upgrade. a total upgrade. That's me. I'm going with Rosie.
Oh, you're muted still, Rosie.
So in our group, we also talked about passing down trauma through generations. But the question that really came up was, what does that mean, healing community? So I think we're all curious to know what that might be and what our unique contribution to that might be. So yeah, to be explored. So I'm going to pass on to Sue.
Thank you, Rosie. I promise that I am going to continue whenever we have any kind of community meeting or whatever, to interrupt when I notice that I'm about to not be able to continue to hear what's being said because I feel disturbed. And even though I feel a bit like a stuck record sometimes, saying, can we please slow down? Can we just take a breath? Can we feel what we're feeling? I'm going to do it, because otherwise I just am not. I'm not with you. I'm agitated, distressed, and disturbed. And yeah, I feel that that's right now probably the clearest contribution that I can share, that I will make in terms of community. And I am going to pass the baton over to you, Christine.
You see, well, I was in my little triad with Niels and Craig, and so we're looking to meet up again as soon as possible and just to commit to that ongoing connection, which we love and we have done for many years. And Craig also offered to collate all the handouts to us, because there's such a deepening into this material. So that's really important, and I really see carrying on this carrying forward these practices, and it's just been just great gratitude, Kosha, and to the foundation being part of this course, and that's probably more than enough from me. I will pass it over to Francine. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for this course, and want to express my gratitude to you, Kosha, and Rosanna, and also to Caroline for having, taking the initiative and the vision actually to put it on. And I've learned a lot, although I find it difficult to articulate what I've learned. And actually my own focus for the next wee while is probably self-care, because I'm taking a sort of sabbatical, and I'm away 3 weeks in July, away, all of August, and I'm away a lot. So, which feels good. It's been a very rich course, and I'm actually going to trace, I'm visiting the place where my grandmother grew up in Indonesia while I'm away. So there's a bit, there's sort of family integration maybe happening. Anyway.
Blessings on your journey, Francine.
Thank you. I'll pass it on to Judith.
Thank you, Francine. And yeah, ditto with the gratitude. I feel like a lot of it is actually the radical self-care that I feel like I've been catapulted in ever since I left the foundation. And beyond that, the result of that is just that this informs every meeting. This way of that, the ability to sense, note, and relate from what I understand and what I'm aware of and what I'm saying, really just is present in my life. And I really feel that the effect of that already, you know, in any interaction I'm in. That's it. Sophie.
Thank you, Judith. Yeah, for me, I think my contribution is going to be not perpetuating the trauma and not colluding when I see it in action, either in myself or in others. And it means self-care, it means awareness of when there's overactivation, when there's you know, dissociation, and just become really present. So yeah, so it's really sort of crystallized a lot of the tools and the sort of symptoms of what trauma actually is. And I'm really grateful to you, Kosha, and to those who, you know, organized this course, and to my triad, which has been absolutely, yeah, lovely. And I hope we will continue speaking together and helping each other out. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sophie. Will you pass it on?
Oh, sorry. Who hasn't been yet? Nicola.
Thanks, Sophie. It was beautiful being in a triad with you earlier. I think my appreciation is the first thing. I'm so grateful to have been able to be in this and that it happened. So Caroline, Kosha, Rosanna, just huge gratitude. It feels to me like it's like a homeopathic remedy at a time where it sort of felt that our collective body of the Findhorn Foundation community, or whatever we call it, was sort of possibly still feeling itself very, I don't know, like body parts at a bomb site. So I would have just anything to show up. I think my feeling right now is actually to just a constant practice of self-regulation, so that I don't interrupt with my trauma, and then to really deepen our collective understanding of forgiveness, because we are imperfect and we're never intended to be perfect. And I think, so I'll leave it there. Community healing practices of learning forgiveness. Thank you.
Beautiful. And who do you pass on to? It becomes trickier.
I pass to dear Caroline. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, I think what's kind of stays with me is like just deepening the practices. I mean, I'm doing the training with Thomas Hubel now, because I just believe in these practices of the triads, the sensing, and then the potential for creating the spaces. So, but I think it takes almost like discipline to keep doing the practices and practice the practices. So I want to see if I can do that both personally and also within the foundation, but also the potential within the community as a whole. So that's kind of what I'm with, I think, at this point. Yeah. And again, hugely grateful, Kosha, to you for you leading this course and what you've brought to it. So thank you. Niels.
Thank you, Caroline. Well, this course came at exactly the right moment for me in my life, when I was at the darkest place that I have ever been in. And I find it so fascinating that this comes out of Thomas Hubel, who I once, when he was in the foundation and I was stupid enough to put my hand up, I felt so humiliated and would never work with this man ever again. So there has been so much healing that has come through this. And I just continue to want to deepen that. And as it unfolds, it just seemed to be a natural process that it just, one thing after the other unfolds, but in a very, very graceful way for me. And I'm so grateful. Thank you. And I think we should go on to Inika.
Inika, you're still muted.
Yeah, I noticed. Now, at the start of this day, this meeting together, I was still full of feelings of our performance last night. And now I started putting every speaker in this last bit on speaker view. And I'm just blown away with the beauty that I see of each one. And that is something, you know, because just before that in our triad, I realized this is it. For me, it doesn't need to lead anywhere else. That's will go by itself because it's in me. And if I try to walk what I think I should walk, then I miss what the moment gives me. So I had an experience of perfection. And yeah, I feel grateful, Kosha, to you. It was beautiful to have Rosanna still in her last, also in our last triad together. And I appreciate our triad. Even when we didn't always meet, but we were always present. The three of us were present when only two were on screen. There's something magical happening in it. And I'm very content continuing this path.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Oh yeah, now I need to choose, then I need to see. Sue, by the way, I love your hair. Is Sue still here?
Yeah, she is.
It's so amazing. I don't see you now.
Yeah. So I think Indira and
Indira, yeah, I
Craig
choose
and
Indira.
Linda and Anne haven't yet spoken.
Indra.
Indra, yeah.
And Craig also.
Craig, exactly.
Indira. Wait, 1 minute.
Sorry, it's just this loudspeaker that I use. Can you hear me now? Yeah, it's Indira. And everything that has been said, I'm kind of just so relating to it all. And I feel, I don't actually know what to say. Inika, I'm glad you mentioned the concert yesterday evening because that's still very much with me. And yeah, and I love the way that this has just been held, actually, the whole thing, meeting on Zoom. Kosha, your gentleness and your perceptiveness, and everyone else involved too, but and then how we are all just present in this moment. I actually don't have words for it, but there's something very special about that. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there. Can you remind me, Kosha, who hasn't?
I think it's Craig, Linda, and Anne, and Sachanama. I'm finding more.
Chanama, my neighbor, who I hardly know.
Thanks, Indira. I mean, I came on this course, one of my main reasons was to connect with people. So I'm fairly new to the community. And that hasn't happened as much as I'd like, I think largely because of the format, being online, and then the 2 hybrid sessions, which are a bit lumpy bumpy, and then back online. So yeah, that's been a little bit disappointing. The triad's been good with Anne and Cornelia. I've very much appreciated the triad. That has, I feel I have connected with both of those 2 lovely ladies. The other thing for me is that's on my mind is how I arrived last September. I'm new to Findhorn pretty much, but I've spent 35 years in Buddhist communities, and something about how I integrate myself into this community. I'm used to kind of throwing myself in, and I haven't done that this time round. But there's still an element of integration to happen. Yeah, anyway, that's my thoughts right at this moment. And yeah, be nice to hear from you, Anne.
Thank you. I think the course has been really good in ways that are quite hard to really fully encapsulate. But as somebody who's already very aware of the trauma that I was working on, my own trauma, I think this 6 months has really amped up the integration work and the work that's been happening with it. So much gratitude for the course. And I think it's been very good to be part of a collective intention around working on these issues and really deepening our collective spiritual journey. I feel as if it's been a privilege to be part of that. In terms of where it goes from here, I guess my work continues on that individual level to see what else there is that I don't know is there. And also I'm quite interested to know if there are developments that come out of this for the community. That remains to be seen, but thank you. And I'll pass it on to Linda.
Linda,
yeah, hello. I'll just leave my camera off because I still have a blue face.
We don't mind the blue face.
You want to see my blue face?
Yes,
okay.
we do.
There we go.
Yeah, beautiful.
I don't know what to say. I feel I perhaps haven't been as present as I would have liked to have been in the course. And I think there were times when being in this room just sort of gave me the permission to sort of collapse a little bit. And I just noticed that happening in some of the sessions, that I just allowed myself to feel my tiredness and allowed myself to just let go. Just looking at all your faces, like I would like to, know people more and reach out to people more. So the intention is there. Yeah, thank you, and thank you very much, Kush, and thank you for the opportunity to be in this course. And I feel that what I've learnt is just starting to penetrate the surface, and it's just going to deepen and infuse. That's the word. Yeah, permeate more. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And I think with that we come to you, Craig, right?
Thank you. Sorry about the video. Usually if I turn video on, the group call, Zoom collapses. Yeah, so I'd like to echo the gratitude that's been expressed and much of what's been said. So much, everyone. One of the richness, one of the feeling of richness that I have is, I think, is all of our contributions and our presence that I've felt during these months. So thank you so much, everyone, for being part of this. I've really appreciated that it started just before the Russia-Ukraine war, and it's and I had a very difficult winter, feeling exhausted and anxious. I'm pretty sure they're attributed to trauma processing in my system, and then I've been feeling the Ukraine war a lot in my system, in my body. So yeah, this has felt very useful, and I'm curious about the healing architectures and how that might unfold in our community. Yeah, I could say much more, but I've just heard the little chime go off. So
Yeah.
thanks, everyone.
Great, thank you, Craig. Thank you so much, everybody. I think we've had everybody. Is that correct? Has anybody not spoken? Wow, amazing. Well, there's not much left for me to say. It was an absolute honor and a joy to hold the space, and I really mean that. And I feel touched as I say that. Even now, I just feel the reverberation of all of your wisdom and depth in this space. And it feels like such a, a privilege. That's right, that's the word, a privilege to be doing this in my home. Because it feels like tending to our garden together. And I keep thinking about, I've been like gardening here around the roundhouse a lot in the past year or so, 2 years, and kind of healing my world stretched nervous system by just, being here in the garden and kind of reconnecting to plants. And then I remember, that Findhorn started with gardens and then went on to the people, and I feel like I'm just about getting ready with my nervous system to really engage more deeply here in the community. And I've absolutely treasured this experience with you, and I am very curious about continuing ripples. So I notice as I look at you that I would love, Satchanama, also after you spoke, I would love an in-person gathering here in the Roundhouse, just to meet after a while, invite you all around, and whoever can come, and to catch up how it's been and how it's landing. And I'm also really curious to see how we can put this into healing architecture structures and what that might mean. So really curious to continue this exploration. For me, it's more a beginning, not an end. And I know, Satchanama, you have to go, others need to go. We're just going to let you go. I just want to end with one sentence from the Tao Te Ching, just because Nicola spoke about perfection and then somebody else said true perfection. And it's just a sentence: true perfection seems imperfect, yet it is perfectly itself. And with that, I would like to let you all go, and thank you. You can download a certificate for this course if that's helpful to you. We'll still need to make it available, but it'll be available. And we'll also send out a feedback form, and that might take a few days, but we'll get that out to you. So thank you, love you, and looking forward to seeing you and hugging you soon without COVID. Much love. Go well, everyone.